Hey gang, I'm up in central Wisconsin today on this cold, gray, blustery day. It's quite appropriate. It's just a few days before Halloween. Perfect. And I'm up here in search of the story of a man named Ed Gein. This guy was pure evil. Now this goes back to 1957, and this guy was known up here basically all over the country and the world in the end as the Butcher of Plainfield, or as I say today, Leatherface. This Ed Gein guy, was a body snatcher and also a murderer. And it was in the fall of 1957, while all the men were out deer hunting, that he committed his final act. And it was then that the authorities discovered the most gruesome scene that they could have ever imagined. It was within his boarded up farmhouse, which was located just ahead here, that we're heading to, where the exhumed body parts of between 20 to 40 corpses of local women that were stolen from nearby graveyards were found. And you'll see, we'll talk about it. These bodies were fashioned into trophies and keepsakes, and from their bones and skin. But of course, that wasn't enough. Then he had to start committing murders. So have you seen the movie? You must have seen the movie Psycho, the old Alfred Hitchcock movie, or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And of course, I'm sure you've seen The Silence of the Lambs. These movies were all inspired directly from this man's story. And here we are. This is the corner of Archer and 2nd Street. Very lonely place here, out woods and farms. I haven't seen a soul yet as I make this long drive off the interstate. And it's here on the left. They moved here from La Crosse, Wisconsin, and they were a family of 4. It was Ed and his brother Henry with the parents. You know, I'm looking over here, and there's not much to see within. Of course, everything is with the farmhouse is gone now. I think I'm going to turn around here and circle back. I did see a gate back there. I think that leads into the property. This is private property, so I'm not going to trespass. But it was a gruesome scene here. Anyway, the mother's name was Augusta, and she was the domineering force of the family. And her biggest trait was that is known as she just hated women. She thought all women were whores, and she taught her 2 boys all about what she thought of women, along with all her other oddities. And it's kind of reminiscent of the movie Psycho, especially. How this boy was raised. Here is the gate that leads into the property. I'm not sure. Looks like there is a trail. But I was just curious to see. The house burned down. The locals torched it. I see there's a barn there. Or it looks like a storage shed with some graffiti. It looks like on the side. Can't quite make it out. But there were outbuildings that survived the auction. There was an auction that happened, but they say that the fire department couldn't find their way here when the fire was reported. Of course, the fire chief was the son of one of the murder victims, so I don't think that was a coincidence. It looks like it says, I can't make it out, and the camera won't focus. Not important. There is some type of shed there. I don't know if that's original or not. Now, I must mention there were some bones found outside the house in the woods or on the property that were dug up by a dog sniffing around. I think it was a 13-year-old girl's body. There were some girls that disappeared. There were other people. There were some men that disappeared also. There's just no telling how many people that he killed and hid. But I can tell you this, there surely are more bodies, bones that have not been found probably on this property, this 200 acres. So at this point, we'll go next to the murder scene. We are in downtown Plainfield, Wisconsin, and it's a very small town. And I imagine it probably hasn't changed very much since the time in the 50s. It was actually November 17th, 1957, was the fateful day that Edward Gein came to town, as he did so often, to the hardware store. And here it is. It's right here. I almost passed it right up. And he, this is it. This is where he had murdered his last victim, a woman by the name of Bernice Warden. This hardware store I see is closed down, and we'll take a quick look. But he had come into town to, on this occasion, to get antifreeze, and it was inside here that everybody was deer hunting, the whole town. And he came in here, and while she was busy doing the antifreeze, and I'm not sure if it matters, I'm sure things are different, but right in there, he apparently took a rifle off the wall. He had a bullet in his pocket, and he shot her in the head. No one was around. Like I said, everyone was deer hunting. And then he dragged her out the back here. Of course, it was all covered in snow at the time. And he loaded her right in his, I don't know if he had a car or a truck. Yeah, this is the back door. I'm sure that's where he dragged her out in the snow. And he drove off and took her back to his farm. We're just outside of town of the town of Plainfield, and very close to the highway here is the cemetery. And we'll just take this road right here. All right, we're in. As I mentioned, the family started out in La Crosse before they came here, and when they packed everything up and moved to this Plainfield area, they I think it was a 200-acre farm that they bought there. They just put everything into farming, and thus became the isolation from the world. Ed and his brother Henry, they could go to school, but they were not allowed to have friends. they were not allowed to socialize. And as I said before, his mother basically thought that all women were whores, and that like La Crosse was like Sodom and Gomorrah, literally. And so these boys grew up by a domineered mother. The father passed away, and that's when things really started to get crazy. So the boys were alone with her under that rule, and this was after they, they were older now. And Henry had met a woman in town. She was divorced, she had a couple kids. I think he was falling in love with her, and he was talking about leaving and moving in with her, which completely horrified Augusta, the mother. And I think his mistake was he started bad-mouthing her to Edward. And not long after, Edward and he were working on a brush fire on their property. And by the way, it was probably all set up by Edward, because the next thing you know, he called the fire department, or went and got the fire department. That house had no power, no water. There were no cell phones, of course. And he went and they all came out, and they found, it was, in the dark, they put out the fire, and they found Henry on his face dead, not around the fire. And they say that he had 2 blows to the back, to the side of the head. And of course, the coroner said at first it was smoke inhalation, and then said he died of a heart attack, heart failure. So Ed was on his way. His mother, maybe from grief or not, had a stroke within months, and then the second stroke, and then Augusta died, leaving Ed all alone in that house. He boarded up all the windows. He kept his mother's room exactly as it was. It was a time capsule. And here we have a veteran, Merle K. Hansen, Corporal, U.S. Army in Korea. Thank you for your service, sir, with Merle. Bonnie J. Garrigan died pretty young. So now Edward was reading magazines about Nazi atrocities, and particularly interested in anatomy and how people were tortured and torn apart, and that kind of started him on this road of horror. He apparently what happened was, because he confessed to all this later, is he started coming to this cemetery here. And let me tell you something, you can look around here, and we don't know which graves. There are people that do know, but many of these graves were desecrated back in the late 40s or early 50s. After, I don't remember the date his mother died, but I guess it's early 50s. And he came here at night and he dug up bodies. Now, he didn't just dig up any body. He would learn of a funeral. And there was one story of a woman that he fancied, and she died. And literally the day after the funeral, he came here at night after she was buried, fresh, and dug her up. And after he dug her up, he placed her body, he brought her body back to the home and basically dissected her, and who knows what else. We'll talk about some of the things that were found in the aftermath. So many of these graves here of these middle-aged women or young women, the bodies they're empty coffins. Just unbelievable. When he couldn't find body, he went to other cemeteries too, by the way, in central Wisconsin here. But when he ran out of bodies, he actually went to this roadhouse and shot and killed a woman named Mary Hogan. Mary Hogan was a bawdy, heavy-set, very outgoing, big personality. She would tell dirty jokes, and he went in there at the right time. And usually this stuff would happen in fall when he'd do this stuff. And shot and killed her. That was the first. And brought her back and took her apart. Did God knows what else. And the Worthen woman, Bernice was next. And it was Bernice who, what happened was he, like I said, he went in the store and he killed her, dragged her body out. But it was her son, after deer hunting, came back, and everybody was like, why is the hardware store closed? And finally her son went in there and he saw the blood on the floor and the place was a mess. And then he looked in the accounts book and it said, Ed Gein, antifreeze. So he immediately went to the sheriff and said, hey, we got to go check it out. So the sheriff went with his deputy. And again, this is pretty gruesome stuff, guys. You're still watching, haven't turned it off yet. Now's your last chance, because I have included and will be including pictures here. They went in the barn, they broke in the door, and that's where they found Bernice Warden. And this is Bernice's family plot. Bernice is right here. She died, 1957. That's when this whole thing blew apart. Bernice was the one murderer that where Ed got caught. God rest your soul, Bernice. They went to the in the barn. There was no lights. They had their flashlights, and all of a sudden, the sheriff bumped into something. Something bumped into his shoulder, and he shined the light on it, and it was Bernice's body hung, as I had described it, upside down, slit from gut to chest, like a deer being gutted. Decapitated. They found her head in the house. It was just a absolute gruesome scene. Of course, after that, they just went to the house and they just started opening everything up and found a list of things that I'm going to describe that are almost indescribable. The graves are over here. All four of them. Mother, father, and the two brothers. They say that Edward's body may actually not be here, but they There was testimony from the graves keeper that he buried him at 4 p.m. So a lot of these legends are myths. But anyway, here is George the father. George died in 1940. The infamous mother, Augusta, who probably was responsible for all this in her teaching ways. This is where Edward is. There's no gravestone. The gravestone was stolen. First it was chipped away, which again, you look at this. Here's mother. She's kind of infamous. And you can just see where people have selfishly desecrated this monument, chipping away for their own morbidity, if that's a word. It's rather disgusting. But Edward, his stone, 150-pound stone was stolen by some creep. And then they were looking on eBay to see if it would turn up. I think this was the year 2000 or somewhere around there. It turned up a year later in Seattle. Some guy named Shane Bugbee, who was running a touring concert type tour called White Man's something, White Man's Revenge or something. And he claimed that it was just a replica. Well, they took it and they determined it was his actual gravestone, that he was kind of a pervert. I'll show you a picture of him, and they got that back. But they didn't put it back. They've got it they had it in the police department basement, and I think it's in the museum's basement. And then we have Henry, the poor brother, who was probably murdered by Edward. Probably hit him with a shovel as he wasn't looking, as they were doing something in the woods, or I believe he just murdered him out there and then staged the whole thing, started a fire. Maybe not. I mean, it was before the mother died, so she would have to have known there was a brush fire. But anyway, I'm sure he murdered him. So this is where there's like an indentation, like a I don't know, it's kind of weird. Like the ground's a little sunken here. That's kind of evil. But Edward, the mutilations that he did, and again, there were other people killed, men, women missing, 2 15-year-olds they think he killed and murdered that were never found. One of the things they found was a head in a box. That was Mary Hogan. They found human skin gloves. They found a belt of female nipples. Couldn't even imagine that. A box of vulvas or vaginas. They found a lamp that had, the lamp cord had lips, a pair of human lips that were attached to the string. You pull down on the human lips. They found 9 facial skin masks. Again, one of them was Mary Hogan. And he would wear these. I think that's where the inspiration for the Leatherface Texas Chainsaw Massacre came. He would wear these things at night with this corset that he made from a woman, literally skinning from the shoulders to the stomach, like a chest plate with straps. And he actually also carved skin from the legs and made legs. And he would put this all out and then put it on and go outside and, who knows, dance in the moonlight. They found skulls that were, some of which they found skulls on bedposts. Some of the skulls were cut laterally where the brain is and used as soup bowls. Of course, they found lampshades and furniture. They found a chair with human skin, lampshade, probably all inspired by the Nazi death camp. I forget the name of that one. I remember reading about the woman, Olga something, I think it was. And they opened the refrigerator and they found organs, just an assortment of human organs. So you just wonder, did he inspire Jeffrey Dahmer? Did he inspired the movies? There's just there's so much evil here. And then to desecrate all the graves here and other cemeteries, taking the fresh corpses, who knows what he did with them? We probably don't want to know. But he died in prison. He was actually found guilty but insane. So he spent the rest of his life till he was 77. He died of cancer in the mental ward of the prison. Actually, the last prison he was in was a minimum security, no bars, no fences. He was said to be an affable, nice, kind guy. Aren't they all, as they wear the mask? But I think as I look at these graves, I feel the worst for Henry and the father, George. And to Henry, say rest in peace, and to George, the other two, I can't. All I can say is I imagine they are, I don't know if they're resting, but they don't have to answer to us, but they are, and certainly Edward is answering to his maker if he's not answered already. A sad tale. I'm inserting this. I did a quick circle back, and ironically, right next to these graves here of the Gein family, we have one of the women who was exhumed by Edward Gein, and that is Eleanor M. Adams, who was born in 1898 in November, and she passed away August 26th, 1951, and presumably on August 28th or 29th of 1951, Edward came here at night and exhumed her body. Of course, at the time, she was buried for just a couple of days, so who would know? All the dirt here was fresh, dug up, put back. They did come back and exhume this grave of Eleanor, and they did find an empty coffin. So this has been confirmed. The police released two names. The other is Everson. And again, I find it amazing that they Mabel Everson is located literally 50 feet away. Those graves obviously were not here. Well, wait a minute, they were here, the mother and the father. So Ed was here at night while his mom and dad were both buried, and his brother. They were all three here. Think about it. And he was here in this little cozy spot, hidden by these trees, hidden by this marker, which was 1944, and he was digging his hole right here, digging up Mabel. Mabel Everson was born in 1882, and she died in 1951. An elderly woman that he wanted and got, because there is no Mabel here. That casket is empty too. So these two were confirmed by the police. There are as many as 20 to 40 others in this cemetery, in the Hancock Cemetery, in the there's another cemetery that's not too far away from here, and a lot of empty coffins. I'm sure they did not exhume all these women to see who his victims were. Too much money, they said. But Mabel, rest in peace wherever you are. Just as I finished this segment, I turned around to walk away, and I saw off to the side there was a guy there doing some work. So I went over. It was the graveyard's keeper, and I started chatting with him, asking him some questions about all of this. He didn't know a lot more than most, but I did ask him. I said, what's that hole where Ed Gein is buried? And he told me that, obviously people, not surprisingly, are taking fistfuls of dirt or pinches of dirt as souvenirs. And I kind of nodded, and as I was walking back to my car, it just reminded me of it's bad karma. It's not only disrespectful, but you're kind of messing with. I'm not a huge paranormal guy, but you can call it karma or spiritual or whatever. But I had a bad experience about 20 years ago. I was that very first video that I did on the Bohemian National Cemetery. I was there. I was in the area, and I had some time to kill. So I was there, and on the north side of that cemetery, I'll never forget, I was walking, just looking at the enamel pictures, the porcelain pictures of different people, and I saw it looked like it was a brand new Ouija board with that piece you put your fingers on right behind a gravestone. I wondered why it was there, but not thinking twice, I grabbed it. I was like, oh, this is cool. And I'm betting maybe some teenagers were there at night, maybe they were playing it, but why did they, later I thought, after some stuff happened, why did they leave it? Well, it wasn't 2 or 3 days later, I think it was 3 days later, I got into a fender bender. And then about a week later, I got into a parking lot, a pretty good car accident. So when I went to pick the car up from the body shop about 2 weeks later, I'll never forget, it was on the north side of Chicago, near Clybourne Avenue in Webster. And I was pulling out, I was 2 blocks out of that that body shop, and I got broadsided by a car going about 40 miles. So it was a van, about 40 miles per hour, never forget, a white van. And thank God it was on the passenger side. It came from the right. Otherwise, I might not be here. A lot of other bad things were happening, and I wasn't sure, but I burned that Ouija board, and things kind of flattened out after that. I don't know if it's coincidence, but I'm just telling you, don't chip at gravestones. Don't bring that stuff. Don't bring that stuff home. There's no upside to it. I will tell you another story like this where relates to The Exorcist, the movie, and this was when I first started my firm 27 years ago. I had gotten a new client out in Itasca, Illinois, on the west side, the suburbs, and the name of that client was Alexian Brothers. They were a hospital. And the woman, Penny, the facility manager, we got to talking, and I don't know how the subject came up, but we started talking about The Exorcist, and she said, I don't know if you know this, but that's all based on a true story. I said, yeah, I kind of heard that. And she said, well, I don't know if you know this, but it was the Alexian brothers who one of the priests, Father Felix, performed that. He's a Jesuit priest. And she started telling me about Alexian brothers. I thought Alexian brothers were like 5 Italian brothers that started a hospital. The Alexian brothers go back to the medieval times, the the plague in Europe, and they were involved in a lot of stuff. And as it turns out, that exorcist story was not a girl, it was a boy, young boy, and he had actually accessed that demon from a Ouija board, from his aunt, who he was very close to. She passed away, and he continued on with it and opened that door. Well, anyway, Penny said they had an archive. There, not for the public. It was a closed room, or closed archives. And she said, if you want to come back, come see it. And we have artifacts from the room where the boy was. And, guys, most of that stuff happened that's in the movie. Not the head spinning around, but a lot of the other stuff. And I was shocked. So I go over there, and I'm going to have to tell you the story. Running out of time here, but next time it was not only very shocking, but it was crazy. I'll tell you about it next time. Maybe next Halloween. Maybe I'll save it for the next Halloween version. But it's anyway. Don't take stuff from cemeteries. That's just my advice. Have a great day, gang.